That's democracy, not fun.
Are all the signs that are around the walls eerily similar to what we had in the state capitol, and there's some signs in here I haven't seen in quite some time, so I appreciate the people that have taken the opportunity to put those up for me. Second time that I've been to San Francisco. In my youth, when I was in my 20s, I decided to travel the country on my motorcycle, and I made it to San Francisco at one point, and got to hang out here for 3 days and hang out with some very good people. Very beautiful town. Another person I want to thank is Mike Daly back there. I can't thank you enough. He's a fellow tradesman, fellow union brother. He's been very, very cool to let me stay at his place and then take me around San Francisco and show me what's going on here as far as union labor is concerned. Raise your fist in the air if you're a union member. Look at that. I like that. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, raise your fist in the air if you're a public sector worker. That'd be a good question. A handful of you out there. All right.
Ask us about our take-back contracts.
Now he wants to talk about serious stuff right off the bat. You got to be careful with that. I can kind of tell you a little bit about myself just to kind of gauge this a little bit better. I'm the executive director of the Building Trades Council of South Central Wisconsin, which basically means that I take care of Dane County and the 8 counties that surround it. Dane County is where Madison resides. I have 4,000 union workers that are underneath me, good hardworking union men and women. I represent 17 different trades, so plumbers, painters, iron workers, electricians, you name it, we probably do that type of work. In our state, out of the 175,000 public sector workers, we have 500 building trades people that work for the state, and they are part of that 175,000 people that had their collective bargaining rights just taken away. So that's something that we can really seriously talk about. When I talk to these people after their rights have been taken away, naturally they're pretty depressed. They're pretty upset about their situation there. They've gone through a lot of concession bargaining over the last several years where they've lost a percentage here and a percentage there, and what Scott Walker was asking for was 12% to go into their pension and 5% to go into their health care, which equals about an 8% cut to them. And if you guys take a real good hard look at an 8% cut, that can be rather devastating, especially when you are a teacher and you're married to a public sector worker and all of your income comes from that same arena, or let's say you're a construction worker like myself and you're married to a public sector worker, it puts a pretty significant impact on what might be considered your net disposable income. Not that any of us know what the hell that is anymore, because I certainly don't have it myself. And in the 8 going on 9 years that I've lived in Madison, Wisconsin, we have not had the money to go take a vacation because we've seen these concessions come for a very, very long time. And I know that there are several people that are in that same arena with us. To kind of give you a little bit of background on the events that happened in Wisconsin, to play a little bit of catch up if you hadn't heard. On February 11th, I received a phone call from Phil Neuenfeld, who's the president of the AFL-CIO for the state of Wisconsin, and he said we need to have a conference call. And we kind of knew what was coming down the pike. We'd heard that Scott Walker was going to come after collective bargaining rights. He was going to ask people to pay huge percentages towards their pension and their health care funds, as well as some of these other more draconian, which is a word that I never thought I'd be using anytime soon, measures that are coming across in this budget repair bill and the budget itself. And we're talking about rolling back child labor laws. We're talking about rolling back animal cruelty laws. And that's how absurd this stuff is. One of the direct measures that were in the budget bill that we just had this story come out on Friday, they want to eliminate the requirement to use union labor when it comes to municipality work. And they rolled that back, and now we actually have, you think that slave labor is gone? Slave labor is back, and it is big now. So now we have people that are sitting in prison coming out and taking care of the lawn. And if you think I'm kidding, that's actually happening right now. And why do you think they want to privatize prisons? They want to be able to have free slave labor to do the type of work that union people do on a pretty regular basis. That's the kind of stuff that we're working against. You know, I just left a conference last week where we talked about, is this a one-sided class war anymore? It's not anymore, because we have public sector workers that are willing to stand up and fight for their rights and fight against these measures. But before that, we did have a one-sided class war. These people have been attacking us for decades, and they've been forging an army, and they have a plan, and they have a strategy, and they've been implementing it for quite some time. And they found a ripe opportunity opportunity. And that ripe opportunity was November of 2010, when you had enough pissed off union members that said, Obama did not give us what we were looking for, and I believe in this propaganda, and I believe in this bullshit that they're putting on the TV about Ron Johnson and some of these other guys, these Republicans that are running against our good Democrats, if you want to call them that. And I believe in it, and I'm going to drink the Kool-Aid, and just like any other midterm election, they flip-flop. They might have voted for Obama a couple of years ago, and now here comes 2010, they're dissatisfied, and now they're going to vote for a Republican. And that's always been the choice, right? Or that's what they think the choice has always been. If I'm dissatisfied with a Dem, I'm going to vote Republican. If I'm dissatisfied with a Republican, I'm going to vote for a Dem, and we flip-flop and flip-flop and flip-flop and play this game and put ourselves in a situation where we finally understand, and middle Wisconsinites finally understand what it means to vote against your own best interest. And now I've got people that are standing out in front of our Capitol lawn that hold signs that are 4x4 that say, I voted for Scott Walker, and I'm sorry. That's pretty bad. You know, Milwaukee hated him so much. He was in Milwaukee for 8 years destroying that town and destroying that county that they said, please vote for this guy so we can get rid of him. That's bad, but now they've just spread that disease further and got it all across the entire state. And this guy is such an ideologue, as we have Mr. Chris Christie out there in New Jersey. We have the governor of Michigan doing the exact same thing. Hell, you've even got your own Democratic governor doing the exact same thing, jamming the stuff down your throats. You have to pay for what happened on Wall Street. You have to pay for what these corporations have done. You have to pay for what Wall Street has done. No more. No more. That's why the people of Wisconsin stood up. They said, you know what, we're done. We're done. We can't afford it, for one. And for two, it's just flatly wrong. I was talking to Steve just a little bit ago. It's so easy to go to middle Wisconsin and sell this idea. And the idea is very simple. Is it wrong to take money from poor people and give it to rich people? Do you believe in that? I mean, if you can believe in that, then you're on the bus. And that's what's happening. People are literally getting on the bus and they're going out to these districts and they're fighting hard for these recall efforts. You know, you talk about recall, people wouldn't have thought twice about this a year ago. Recall, what's that? What do you mean? That's never happened. That's unprecedented. Now we have 6 of them running in the same year, in an off year. And they get so upset that they want to try and pull 3 of the Democrats out of there doing the same thing. And then the AFL-CIO of all folks decide that it's a great idea to run fake Democrats too, so that they can extend out primaries. I don't know if you guys look at it the same way, but this is a complete perversion of our political system. And to such a level that it's audacious. And you look at like the Chris Christies again, I like to use him as an example because he's such a douchebag, but he takes the state copter, flies it to his kid's baseball game, jumps into a limo and drives a mile down the road, all at the expense of the taxpayers of New Jersey. You have the governor of Michigan taking over an entire city, taking the mayor and the city council, pushing them off to the side, completely taking all their rights away, taking the rights of the people who voted them into that position away, and saying, I'm going to bring a manager in to manage your town. Oh, and by the way, we're going to build a new golf course. I don't know what you guys call it, but I call that fascism. I call that despotism. I call it tyranny. And the Constitution that I read, and I just read it on my plane right here, again, and I highly recommend everybody in this room read it. Article 4, Section 4 says, the federal government should be there for us when you have despotism in the state. I don't see Obama putting his comfortable shoes on and coming and helping us out anytime soon. He's too much in bed with his Republican buddies who he'd rather play golf with and negotiate your Social Security away. We got some serious problems here. And Wisconsin is just the cusp of it. The reason that Wisconsin got so much damn attention is because we were able to bring 170,000 people to the Capitol. And it's a beautiful thing, it is. But you think about it in the big picture aspect of it, and this is something I try to clarify for people because everybody wants to put their hands on somebody from Wisconsin, you know, and it's it's a beautiful thing, it's wonderful, but really, we're just one small piece of the puzzle. And this stuff is not only happening statewide and citywide, it's happening nationwide. And actually, it's happening worldwide. When you have people that are in Egypt that are holding up a sign that says, "Wisconsin, we are with you," that's pretty amazing. But they're going through the exact same thing that we're going through, austerity measures. Yeah, UK as well, J30. Thank God for those people, if that's what you believe in. That's pretty amazing to stand up and have the entire country say, "We're doing this. We'll go on a general strike, or we'll do what it takes to show you that these austerity measures are absolutely wrong." The thing is we know where the money is. Everybody knows where the money is. I wish I had Hank Paulson's cell number. I'll give him a buzz. "Hey, brother, you're not going to have much of a country to run here pretty soon if you keep going with these measures. It doesn't do anybody any good." But it did, I don't know that it started in Wisconsin. I don't think that it necessarily did, but you could certainly see it in Egypt. You could certainly see it in Spain. You can certainly see it in Greece. I had a young lady tell me, "Well, Greece put themselves there. They didn't want to pay their taxes." I tell you what, those students in Greece sure as hell didn't put themselves there, and that's why they're out there fighting and pushing those cops back into that Capitol. Even after having tear gas from Pennsylvania shot at them, they still stood up and pushed those cops back into the Capitol. That takes balls to do that. It takes a hell of a lot of balls. So we have to do the same thing. What I feel like I'm doing by traveling the country, I was in Chicago last week, I was in Ohio the week before, spread the word and just say, look, you have the power to stand up against this stuff. You have the power and ability to make those changes and make the differences that you want, regardless of whether you believe you do or not. Every person in this room is a working class person. Regardless of whether you work for the public sector or private sector, or if you work at Jimmy John's making sandwiches, or you push a broom, or you work in an office, you're working class. And I tell you what, as a politician, if somebody was a politician and they were smart, they would put together a labor working class party, and they would run for the working class of this country. It's the largest contingent, the largest constituency in this country is working people. And what is so difficult about standing in front of a microphone and saying, "You know what? I'm for everybody having health care. I'm for everybody having a living wage. I'm for everybody that when they retire, regardless of whether you push a broom or push a button, that you have some sort of pension to live on, that you have a decent place to live, and that you have health care." What is wrong with that? I think everybody can get on board with that. Oh, and by the way, I think we should tax the rich. For Christ's sake. But again, what am I saying? It's common sense, right? Every person that I talk to says, yes, yes, yes. Taking money away from the poor and giving it to the rich is stupid, and yes. It's common sense. And if we can't have something like that right now, what do we have? We have working class people standing up for themselves, and we will hold those that are in authority. We're going to hold them accountable, especially the Obamas of this planet. Are you guys as disappointed in that shit as I am? I mean, seriously. I don't know about you guys, I just got this thing in the mail the other day that asked me about all the stuff that we did in 2008 to get him elected. How many hours did you donate? How much money did you donate? How many people did you take to rallies? How much effort did you put into getting this guy into office? Because he said that he was going to do something along the lines of, allowing people to organize and put unions together. Right? And everybody's saying, is this what we voted for? Absolutely not. So people's eyes are opening to things now. They're realizing that the Democrats really aren't our friends like they say that they are. They've always given us false promises, and they've always been weak-kneed. And the Republicans haven't necessarily helped us out either. But I tell you what, I'll vote for darn near anybody that has the ability to stand up in front of a microphone and say, working class. I have all the faith in the world with somebody, and I love this word too. Please, politicians, say the word union, and don't say it like it's a dirty word. I am so proud of my trade brothers and sisters. They work so hard. Nothing was more amazing than to stand in front of tens of thousands of people that are a union, non-union, tradesmen, and when we talk about tradesmen, this is funny, this is where I come from, 15 years of trade unionism. You have people that fight against each other for the same work. You have iron workers that will fight against the electricians because they're building a solar farm, right? Who gets to build these towers and who doesn't? Those guys are standing right next to each other holding the same sign in solidarity. You have union and non-union people. Well, let's back it up just a tick. You have trade unions and office unions standing next to each other. And I've had trade unionists look at the green shirts, the AFSCMEs, and the SEIUs of the world and scoff at them and curse at them. What have they done for us? I actually had trade unions tell me, what have the teachers ever done for us? They've never stood up for us. Why should we stand up for them? Really? But those same people are out there in the tens of thousands standing next to a teacher holding the same sign in solidarity. You have union people standing next to non-union people, and instead of those non-union people damning the union people for having something they don't have, oh, you have health care, and you've got a pension, and I don't have that stuff, so you shouldn't have it either. Seriously, that's one of the Republicans' favorite little tools there to divide you, right? They want to split you in half and say, well, I don't have it, so they shouldn't have it either. No, sister and brother, you should have it too. Everybody should have it. It's common sense. But that divide wasn't there anymore. They were able to see through that stuff and see that that was all false. It's all fake. And they go, okay, so what is collective bargaining? And you say, well, this is what collective bargaining is. You're doing it right now. Well, I kind of like that. And they did it day in and day out. It'd be 25 degrees outside with a 25-mile-an-hour wind, and you'd have people out there with their babies. You'd have elderly people out there that would normally never step outside in 25-mile-an-hour winds, 25 degrees, eating one of our 24,000 broads. That's solidarity. My favorite picture is where I have a guy who has a slice of Ian's pizza. You can see some of the boxes over there. And one of our building trades brats on the same plate. And I define that picture as solidarity. This particular instance in history has allowed us the opportunity to elevate ourselves beyond our own personal best interests to the best interests of everybody collectively. Now think about that. It doesn't matter if you're LGBT, it doesn't matter if you are union or not, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, brown, green, yellow, or purple. Everybody was out there because they all saw this as a point of everyone standing together. And the conversation was finally elevated after all this time, after all this divide, after all this rhetoric, and after all this BS, to human rights, civil rights, and constitutional rights. That's how everybody finally saw it. And that's the beauty of it. Now everybody can get on board with that. I mean, raise your fist if you believe in human rights. Raise your fist if you believe in civil rights. Raise your fist if you believe in your constitutional rights. Everybody can get on board with that. And why not? That's what we're fighting for. So once we get everybody elevated to that type of conversation, now we can start talking about what do we do next? Well, we hold our leaders accountable, right? Get rid of them if you have to. I just got a Facebook post just right before I got up here. It says, get rid of all of them. That's pretty extreme, you know, it might not be the easiest thing to do, but, you know, they're not doing what the people that hired them to do asked them. So there's a serious problem there. So accountability is key. There's no doubt about that. And I'm not just talking about our elected leaders, our politicians. I'm talking about our union leadership as well. And I'm part of that union leadership. You have to hold the union leadership accountable as well. This concession bargaining has got to go. The whole point that you're being represented by union leadership is so that you don't take any more cuts, you don't take any more concessions, you continue to advance the trade itself or whatever you do for a living. Because the cost of living sure as hell isn't going down, is it? I haven't seen it go down in my entire lifetime. It's always going up. How else are we going to be able to keep up with that? You see wages stagnate since the 70s to today. Yet you see corporations and people that run these corporations make 400 times what you and I make. 400 times. The idea that somebody makes $2.5 million an hour is outrageous. That's disgusting. Seriously? That we have people manufacturing goods in other countries that are working under such harsh conditions that they have to place nets around the building for when they jump off the top of them because they're committing suicide. That is outrageous. So we're holding our elected leaders accountable. We're holding our union leadership accountable, which I think is something that we should seriously be talking about here. Just as importantly, we have to hold ourselves accountable. We have to remove ourselves from the idea that we're victims in this particular instance and say, we're not going to do it anymore. This battered wife syndrome that we've been experiencing with our government and with our union leadership has got to go. You're not going to slap me anymore. I'm going to stand up for myself and I'm going to do something about it. And guess what? All of my brothers and sisters are going to do the exact same thing. And that is their greatest fear. They can't divide us anymore. They can't lie to us anymore. We see through their bullshit, and we're all going to stand up together in solidarity. And that's the thing. My brother back there is wearing one of the shirts, solidarity. That's what true solidarity is. It's everybody in the working class standing together against what is going on here. That's the only way that we're going to win this stuff. We have to support each other, we have to prop each other up, and we have to continue to fight what's going on. You guys are empowered. You know, I do these sessions with leadership for my union before I became the executive director, and I'd walk up to a guy and I'd say, in 15 seconds I'm going to slap you as hard as I possibly can. Now you can do a handful of things. You could stand there and let me slap the piss out of you. You could move, or you could stop me. What are you going to do? And as soon as I raise up my hand, I get a reaction. I've never seen somebody just stand there and let me slap them. And some of them will stand there in a fighting stance as soon as I raise my hand. That's what I want to see. I want to see your fighting stance. I want to see you stand up for what is right, for you and your family. The best description that I can give you and what we're going through right now is the house of labor is on fire, and your family's inside. Is there anything that's going to prevent you from running in there and save your family? It wouldn't me. I wouldn't think twice about being burned. I'm going to run in there, I'm going to save my kids. And if I got an extra arm, I'm probably going to grab a photo book or something that is an heirloom in my family. I might grab my grandfather's watch. And that's what the House of Labor is. It's my grandfather's watch that he bought the day that my mother was born. And he wore it until the day he died. And when he died, I got this watch. This is my family heirloom. This has so much value to me. And it has so much value to my mother. That's the House of Labor. And that's what we're fighting to save. And unless we stand up, and unless we fight, and we stand together in solidarity, true solidarity, put all of our petty issues behind us, and fight for these things, we're going to lose that family heirloom. We can't afford to do that. We've lost enough as it is. When I look at union density in this country being less than 12% and falling every single year, and I look at it as a businessman, that's a failed business model. There's got to be a better business model in here. We can find a better business model, and that better business model right now is solidarity. It's all of us standing together and fighting against these austerity measures and fighting against all of this stuff that they're trying to jam down our throats. And until we do that, they're going to continue to do it. And we will end up those wage slaves and those prison inmates that are out there procuring that lawn for that particular city or state. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not interested in that whatsoever. I'm interested in saving my family. Now, before I took this position, I was a painter. And the painters were my family. And then becoming executive director of the Building Trades Council, my family grew from the painters to 17 other different trades. And instead of just the few thousand guys that I took care of as painters, that grew into 10,000 people. And then February 11th happened. And all through the month of February and March, my family grew again. And now it wasn't just trade unions. It was service unions. It was non-union. It was immigrant. It was lesbian and gay. And here's somebody that we've been missing this whole time, the unemployed. So now my family's grown even more. You know, nothing gave me more, I don't know that I would call it joy, but I would certainly call it love, than to walk through the Capitol in the middle of the night while everybody's sleeping. It's like checking on your kids, literally. And some of my kids were in their 60s. But it was pretty cool to walk through that silent, gigantic building with all these people sleeping. And seeing all these signs like you see up against the walls here. Because 12 hours later, I'll be walking through the rotunda, and there's 4,000 people there, and when the firefighters make their way through there, that room explodes. It absolutely blows up. But it's madness. I mean, there's so much noise. Your brain is rattling inside your head, and you don't know what to do, or you don't know what to say. But somebody does this. And then 4,000 people do this, and the room goes completely freaking silent. And anybody in that room has the opportunity to grab the microphone and say anything that is on their mind. That's solidarity. That's family, and it is democracy. You're right. So, the lessons we learned from Madison, Wisconsin, there are tons of them. But solidarity is a major key. And putting those petty issues that we might personally have off to the side and realizing that that brother or sister standing next to us is truly our brother and our sister is really what's going to save us. I sincerely hope you guys join my little family here. Thanks. In my opinion, I don't like the idea that it's ended, but I understand where you're coming from there. After that bill was signed, then these people have an 8% cut that goes directly to their wages, and it's going to be going into pension, it's going to be going into health care. From what I understand, that's going to be happening at the tail end of this month. It depends on what part of the state you work for. So like if you work for the offices, it's going to be at this date. If you're a building trades person, it's this date. We're also fighting it for the building trades because in the building trades, these guys have already given 100% to their pension and 100% to their health care. So these guys are so backwards when they put the budgets and these laws together, they don't even know how they're actually going to implement them, which is actually increasingly frightening because you have some really serious stuff that's coming down the pike with this budget. Now, I'll give you a great example. We have this thing called a line item veto that he has, and he can actually edit. It has to be an entire sentence, so you can't like edit a sentence and just edit a few words out of it to create a new sentence. That's one good thing about it. But his handlers, because it's certainly not him, he's a doofus, his handlers have trained him well enough to realize that numbers that are a part of a sentence aren't part of that. So they were supposed to have a 10% investment in the people that were part of their pension program for less than 5 years. He took the one off of there, so now they have a zero investment for them. You have to be a member of, you have to be working for the state for 5 years now before you're fully vested, whereas before they were partially vested for those first 5 years by 10%. So, I mean, he's taking, and he says that's nominal, but as far as the budget is concerned, like I said, this thing is so brutal and so far-reaching for people. The poorest of the poor are the ones that are impacted the most. I was talking to my friend Alex Gillis, who is the guy who basically runs the Immigrant Workers Union, and he said that some of his janitors, their first paycheck of the month is completely wiped out, it's gone. That's how much of an impact it's going to have on those particular people. People that are on Badger Care, which is basically health care for kids and the poor, tremendous impact. Over $1 billion in cuts to education. Schools can't do anything about it. Cities can't do anything about it. They can't even raise their own taxes in order to try and make up for the losses that they would have normally received from the state. He put that in the budget as well. So they're trying to stagnate this entire state. People are severely depressed by it. It's pretty brutal. You know, the easiest thing to sell to a tradesman is if that money's brought back and invested into the infrastructure, then you go back to work. Especially a guy that's been off for the last 3 years plus, and I have 30% unemployment in a lot of my trades. That sells pretty well, and you have a very valid point, and I appreciate you bringing it up. On the other hand, with the housing, we actually have groups that are around the country, and they've come to Madison as well, where they take over a house that's been foreclosed on and closed up, and they put a family into that house, and then they defend that house for that family. It works sometimes, it doesn't work other times, but the idea is still there. We should not have people that make 400 times what you and I make in a given year, not just in a lifetime, but in a year, and have other people, children, that don't have a place to live. I mean, again, it's just absolutely absurd. So I'm glad that people are standing up and fighting for that. When trade unionism was built in the 1800s, and you're talking about socialists and communists who actually built that trade union together, and that's not a history that a lot of people are willing to talk about. Because after they actually built those unions in the late 1800s, they were all flushed out of this country, and all these trade unions decided to be American white men. But so that's kind of alludes to the history a little bit of it. If you talk to the rank and file understand that unregulated capitalism is a failure. They're feeling it. They see it. When they thought that they were going back to work in April and they didn't, and then May came around and they still didn't go back to work, and it continues on and on and on, they realize when they watch television, they see a guy driving 15 Lamborghinis and, being able to spend $1 million to jump into an airplane and go into the outer limits of the hemisphere, something is inherently wrong. So those guys, they understand that. But when you talk about the larger unions and capitalism, there's not a disconnect there. With larger unions, capitalism is the way of business, and that is how we conduct business, and that is how we are able to make the money that we make. But again, I think there's, with some of the unions, there's a severe disconnect with the leadership versus the rank and file. I feel very lucky to live in Madison because I have a lot of leadership that still only make about what the top guy out in the field makes, with no overtime. So that guy out in the field actually ends up making more than he does because he's salary based, and that's a good thing because it keeps him grounded and it keeps him doing the good work of what he's done. But then you also have union leadership and bureaucracy that make 6 figures and are completely disconnected from their membership, so much so that as these public sector workers are being kicked to the ground by their own state government, instead of lending their hand out saying, here, let me help you out, they say, give me $1 first. I need your dues because your dues checkoff has been taken out of this budget. That's brutal. So there's a severe disconnect there, and that's certainly a longer conversation. We can have it another time. The gentleman in the back.
Yeah. My question somewhat dovetails with what the brother here asked, a little more narrow. One thing that inspired a lot of us, at least in the labor left, Bay Area and elsewhere, about what happened in Wisconsin, it looked like for the first time since 1946 in Oakland that there might actually be a general strike. Not just something that's on leaflets or whatever, or proclamations by socialist groups, but something that might actually happen. Especially when it was, I guess, the head of the firefighters, which is not exactly the most radical unions around, proposed that. But then it disappeared. And a friend of mine in the Oakland Teachers Union was in Madison, went to visit, talk to people, and all the officials he talked to poo-pooed that and said, no, we're going to put our energy behind recalls. I'm not against recalls, but a general strike would be a whole lot more powerful. So what happened to that momentum for a general strike? Where did it evaporate? How did it evaporate?
Let me see, how do I answer this one? Being in the position that I'm in, I consider myself to be middle management, union middle management basically, and of course I'm hired, so I can be fired. So what I'm getting ready to tell you might put my job at risk, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway, because I've said it around the country and it's probably going to catch up with me eventually, but that's okay. I'm sitting in a meeting with the leaders of the AFL-CIO, along with the leaders of the major unions in the state of Wisconsin. And we're talking about recall efforts, we're talking about a number of other things, who's going to be at this next protest rally, who's going to be the rock band that's going to be there, who's going to be the celebrity that we're going to bring out, and things like that. And I'm starting to see how these things are devolving into basically rock concerts. And they're not really protests where people are standing up and saying this is wrong and we need to do something. Now again, you're surrounded yourself by 100,000 people, and 100,000 people of all the ilk that I've explained earlier, and they're all looking at each other at some point and they go, what's next? That's the question, right? What is next? And the neat thing about that is again, a year ago, if we were standing around talking about anything. Let's say we're at the pub and somebody mentions general strike, they'd be like, ah, those IWW guys, you got a little. I got a sister in here, right? So, but here we are, and average, everyday, working Americans are looking at each other and they're saying, what's next? Knowing what that answer is. So, I'm in this AFL-CIO meeting with these major union leaders, and I say, guys, what's next? And they said, well, Eric, we're going to do the repeal thing. I said, all right, well, what's next? Well, we got these protests, blah, blah, blah. I said, and what's next? And they're like, well, Eric, what are you asking me? And I don't like to beat around the bush, and I probably could have said it in a more subtle way, but I said, general strike. And I know it's a scary thing. And I know some of my trade unionist brothers are going to kind of frown on that, and let me explain where I was going with that. I had two major reactions in that room. Number one was extreme fear. Extreme fear flooded over half of that room. The other half of the room, extreme anger. Those were the two reactions that I received. So from the extreme anger side, I got, Eric, you can't do that. They're going to sue us. They're going to litigate us to death. I was like, okay. What about Ken Riley, and what about the longshoremen in South Carolina? Well, we can't do that, we can't do that. And then the extreme fear folks are like, we can't do that, I'll lose my job. I'll lose my position, I'll lose my house, I'll lose my pension, I'll lose. So those are the reactions that you got from major labor leaders. Whereas you have rank and file people that were ready to take that next step. And I explained it to him very simply. I said, general strike doesn't mean that Eric's going to pick up a chair and throw it through a window. General strike could very well mean that we all go to work one day and we take our pens at 10 o'clock that strikes fear into the bosses. If everybody in an office building at 10 o'clock on a Thursday starts tapping their pens on that table, that scares the hell out of them. It could be as small as something like that. It could be another step up where we all have a brown bag lunch on Thursday and we all take lunch at the exact same time. And we all go outside and we all sit in the same place and we all talk about the same thing. Because it's my time, it's my lunch, and I'm going to do damn well what I want to do. It could be one day we take lunch, and guess what? I'm not going back to work. But it's not just me, it's the entire building. It's the entire job site. We had a general strike in Madison. They call it a sick out. The teachers finally got fed up and said, you know what? I'm going to the Capitol today. You want to come with me? And they didn't do it as a strike. The word general strike wasn't even used. They did it like this. They picked up the phone and they said, do you want to go to work today? Or do you want to do what your conscience tells you? That doesn't sound like a general strike to me. That sounds like a First Amendment right. Freedom of speech, the freedom to assemble, and the freedom to ask for a grievance against what's happening to me. So, in reality, a general strike on a piece of paper for a trade unionist says there's an anti-strike clause, and if you go on strike, I can sue you, and I can sue you for 3 times what it normally would cost. So if I cost you $250,000, I want to sue you for $750,000. That was the fear. But these teachers found a way around that. They said, this is my First Amendment right. This is wrong. I'm going to go do this. They ended up going back to work because there was a lot of public pressure from parents that weren't prepared to take care of their kids because they had to go to work and their kids were supposed to be at school and now I've got to stay at home and now we really kind of put a monkey wrench in here, or more apropos, a wooden shoe into the machine. So there was pressure there. Pressure from leadership to lose their power, pressure from leadership because of their fear of litigation, and pressure from the public because they wanted their teachers back and they wanted everything to go back to normal. So to answer your question in the simplest sense of the word, it's fear. And we have to have I'll tell you what one of my favorite quotes from Egypt. Once we removed the fear from our hearts, we knew we had won. That's really what it comes down to. And it's really hard for a single person to stand up there and say something like that. But if you have tens of thousands of people standing behind you saying the same thing, you know you're on the right track. And when I'm surrounded by 100,000 people saying the exact same thing, I don't need polls. I don't need focus groups to tell me what's right, which is what the AFL-CIO kept saying. Well, we got polls. We got focus groups. Really? There's 100,000 people right there. Ask them what they want. They want justice. And that's what everybody in this room wants, I think. So, to answer your question, that's where it was. Rank and file were ready to rock, but leadership wasn't. I will say this, though. The general strike didn't happen overnight. It's not something that you can just pick up the phone and say, hey guys, let's go general strike. Oh, that's a good idea. And then we all go. It doesn't work like that. It never has worked like that in the history of the labor movement, ever, 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 ever. Not even in the 20s and 30s, not even in the revolutions that happened in Russia. It takes years for that stuff to come together. And what happens in those years is education and organization. Education and organization. Education and organization. And that's me sitting down with each one of you one-on-one and having an in-depth conversation about what we really want out of life. And saying, this is how we're going to go and get it. So the best suggestion I can give to you people and anybody else that I talk to is go talk to your brothers and sisters. Talk to them about the stuff that's happening in the world. Get them out from in front of that goddamn television and educate them so that they know and understand what's happening to them. Because otherwise they're going to die sitting in front of American Idol drinking a cheap beer that was made in some other country and not getting anything done, and we're all going to be wage slaves and we're all going to die. Education, organization.